skeletons send shivers down your spine, and shrieking skulls will suck your soul and seal your doom tonight. Spooky, scary skeletons speak with such a screech. You'll shake and shudder in surprise when you hear these zombies speak.
Welcome to the first ever episode of Infinite Adventures. It is me, your decomposing and dying Rulelord Pete. But I am not on my traditional podcast, Rise of the Rulelords, in either the Unchained or normal version. In fact, this is a new spinoff podcast because I love third-party content so much I really wanted to explore it. But I am not going on this adventure alone. In fact, I am very happy to introduce my first ever co-host. She's already an experienced podcaster with her own excellent podcast that she co-hosts called Dice Don't Die, Beth Perrin. Welcome.
Hello. I am so excited to be here.
And I am so excited that you're going to be joining us. Beth, if you haven't listened to Dice Don't Die, and you really, really should, is an expert analyst when it comes to really dissecting everything about Pathfinder, the classes, the ancestries, really diving deep into the nitty-gritty of a class. Me, I just look at it, it's like new and shiny and cool, and I'm like, ooh, woo, I want to talk about it. Beth is going to go in and really examine these third-party classes for you on this show to tell you how good they are going to be for your game, how close they are to Paizo official products. Because the truth is, many of these things that are coming out are by people who are working with Paizo, who are getting to start working with Paizo. They are made with the same care and dedication that goes into creating Paizo classes, ancestries, feats, items, adventures. And it's really kind of a stigma that I would like this podcast to help combat, that they're not good enough for you to incorporate into your game. They're really awesome things that, even if Paizo does have plans to implement them like they did with the Kineticist, it might take them a while, or maybe they'll never touch them at all, in which case these third-party publishers are filling in those gaps. And we really want to call attention to the cool, really, really cool ones that stick out to us. One of the first classes that really caught our attention is a brand new class recently released from Samurai Sheepdog called the Necromancer. Yes, you've heard them in all kinds of different campaigns, but you've never gotten to play one in 2E until now. The book is called Banned from the Boneyard, Golarion Necromancers, made by Pathfinder Infinite author Kevin Glusing, who is here with us today. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, great to be on. Thank you so much for asking me to join you guys. I'm really looking forward to this.
We're super excited that you're going to be talking to us about this new awesome class. So this podcast is going to happen in two parts. First, we're going to dissect Kevin's brain about his class, the inspirations behind it, things that you could know to maybe help develop your own classes or incorporate it into your game. And then Beth and I are going to take a deep dive into the class in our second part. This will be without Kevin, but we want to get started first with you, Kevin, because we know that your time is valuable, and we really want to get talking about this class. So tell us, what inspired you to make the Necromancer class, and especially what kind of inspiration did you take to start building it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Necromancer class, specifically for Golarion, I built based on a conversion that we did for Pathfinder 1st Edition, actually, where we created the Necromancer class for one of our settings. It's called Lands of Thea by Stephen Rashid James. And before that, we actually also had the same Necromancer with different, they're called Necromantic Studies. It's a feature that the class has both in 1st and 2nd edition. But we created it originally for our Book of Many Things, which is a collection of requests that we get from people around the internet and kind of put them all together into one compilation. Been doing that for going on 4 years now. So taking those things and kind of converting them into Pathfinder 2nd edition now that it's kind of found its footing, has been a lot of fun. And the Necromancer was kind of a natural fit when, obviously, with October had come around and we were getting ready to put that together.
And you mentioned that there was an option in first edition, but that option was also made by you. Tell us, like, what are some of the similarities between what you did with first edition and bringing it over into second edition?
Yes. So what we did with the Pathfinder First Edition is we created the class to be something that represents the necromancers who are not just wizards who take the necromancy school, or clerics who study, lords of the undead and things like that. Better, we wanted to kind of honor and reminisce about the true necromancer class, or the dread necromancer class, and in some cases even to a lesser degree the hallowed necromancer. And so when we originally wrote the Pathfinder Necromancer, we wanted to make sure that we had those kinds of options available to players. In converting it to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, we actually did not replicate that same process immediately, because the Golarion Necromancer has its own feel, has its own history and story in the world that may or may not immediately fit into those molds.
And this incorporates a lot of lore from Golarion, especially, incorporating new options that came from the Book of the Dead. So what kind of research did you do into Golarion lore and bringing in those Book of the Dead options to the Necromancer?
Well, one of the first things that I did was I made sure that, I read up on all of the different things in the Book of the Dead, basically from cover to cover, learning all about the different regions and the different characters who are at play, like Tar Bafan, the necromancers in Geb, the ghouls that they have in the underground city that they run. And then I expanded on that by going to, for example, Pathfinder Wiki has a lot of lore that is represented there from both first and second edition, and even within stories that I may not have had time to read otherwise. So by
Can I just
pulling
say,
up, yeah.
Shout out to the people who maintain Pathfinder Wiki, because holy crap, I cannot even imagine all the work that takes.
It is a very wonderful site, actually, and one of the things that I did more recently, actually, to help out was to recontribute back to it. I got signed up as one of the editors to be able to go in and make pages and create stuff and add things. Unfortunately, I haven't had much time to do that, but it is an option that I have available to me, so that if I'm ever writing something and I come across something that I know is flagrantly said in a different location or a different book, I can go in and I can edit that real quick and be like, okay, no, this is what it is.
Sure.
So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And part of the reason why you're able to incorporate so much of Golarion specifically is because of this cool perk you have as an Infinite Master. Tell us, what is the Infinite Master program and what did you do to get onto it?
When I joined up on Pathfinder Infinite in the first days that it really became available, right? So as soon as it was live for us to sign up and start working on, I did so. And anybody can really go on and agree to the process and the procedures in order to actually get it done and start making products for Pathfinder Infinite. But there's a few, regulations, like you've got to make sure that your content relates directly to Golarion as a world and Paizo's content. Whereas if you sold anywhere else, like DriveThruRPG, you actually have to specifically stay away from that. So they encourage anybody on Pathfinder Infinite to make sure that they're using the Golarion specific stuff. In exchange, you pay a minor fee in your royalties to be able to do that, but it also gives you the bump because Pathfinder and Paizo specifically is actually really good about boosting those products and saying, hey guys, check it out. This is the new stuff we've got in here. And then that naturally over the course of the year, I've produced several products. I think I'm up to like 8 now. And they reached out to me specifically, and several others that came along and said, hey, we want you to join this program called Pathfinder Infinite Masters. Originally, when Pathfinder Infinite came out, it was pretty much only Paizo employees. And so myself and these other awesome designers whose work I also have in my own libraries, were invited to join as like the first wave of people who got to put onto Infinite Masters that weren't directly working with Paizo. And so joined in on that, and it's a really fun, addition to the program for Pathfinder Infinite. As far as requirements, the only thing is we got to make sure that we kind of stay current on the product. So like we have this product came out directly related to the Book of the Dead, which was great, and it came out around a time that the Book of the Dead, had come out within a couple months. We also have new stuff coming out. Anytime that Paizo has new products coming out, there's bound to be something that we've put together to go along and kind of complement that. For example, I know Impossible Lands is on its way out within the next week or so, and we have several products offered that we're looking forward to bringing to that as well once it releases.
Awesome. The Impossible Lands
So
book.
excited.
Beth actually has it, lucky girl, behind her on her screen. I know you guys can't see it as listeners, but very jealous that you already got your hands on it.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it was one of the books we were most excited about for this year. So I had to get it immediately. So
as soon as it came out.
Of course, I said that about Book of the Dead too. So maybe I'm just a sucker.
Well, what's so nice about both of them is that they tie in so well, because you have, the Impossible Lands include Geb and a few of those other locations. So you get some of that more of the lore tie-in that helps you build things like you could build a Necromancer, and you have more information in Impossible Lands and the Book of the Dead to be able to help expand that character out.
There's a lot of them in here that directly relate to Golarion, which is really cool. The necromantic studies you have, the Gebite necromancy, the wave, the Whispering Way, all directly relate to the Paizo stuff somehow. So you can easily take this class and insert yourself into the Bloodlords, which is awesome because it's a adventure path in Golarion. You have these Golarion related things. So really cool thing for players to be able to look forward to. But one of the big things about a Necromancer is typically we kind of associate them with the bad guys. So what would be, in your interpretation, the fantasy of playing this class as a player? Like, why is this a class that should be brought to players rather than just kept as, the options for the NPCs that the players go fight?
Well, what it is that in Golarion, necromancy is not immediately evil. It blurs the lines sometimes, but if you're not the Whispering Tyrant or some other like god of death or something, you're really not necessarily an evil person, or your actions are not themselves evil. They use things like in Geb, they have worker zombies that help to build stuff and carry things and do labor that, otherwise they would employ things like slaves or anything of that nature. And so having those undead to be able to do that, somebody's family might owe money to someone. Well, they can sell their post-mortem family member to rise as a zombie and go work for them. And then, in general, a lot of times you can also use necromancy to kind of fight necromancy. That's one of the things that one of the necromantic studies actually focuses specifically on is the Osirian necromancy. Osirian does not like necromancy, does not like the dead, things like that, but they understand, or at least the necromancers do, the need for that kind of option in order to be able to take them out and challenge the ones that are evil.
I really love this line from the actually summary of the Necromancer. It says, "The masses see necromancy only as one thing, an evil magic that undermines the life given to them by their so-called gods. But the art of necromancy is so much more. It is an arcane school, a divine reckoning, an occult practice, and a primal force of nature." Knowing that you wrote those words, just very powerful. How did you try to embody all of those different aspects when you were writing about the Necromancer?
Well, I really wanted to make sure that we hit on all of the different ways, with it being a necromancer that isn't just another version of the wizard's necromancer or something like that. I wanted to make sure that we really emphasized that you can have necromancy almost as its own entity in the universe. I mean, death is an element, and there's a whole plane dedicated to it and all of these things. And so to just put it into this one tiny area of magic is to give it no room to grow. And so we wanted to make sure that we pushed that, to its limit and said, okay, so what does it look like to have primal necromancy? You have decay and you have rot and you have rebirth and, regeneration, things like that. And then same thing with, occult necromancy versus divine necromancy. Divine necromancy, you're going to have the gods of death. You've got Orcus, you've got, to a lesser extent, Bane and a few of the other archdevils that do that kind of stuff. But then in occult necromancy, you're looking at, you're studying the way that the mind functions after death. And so you might animate a corpse using the electricity that still passes through it.
The big meme that pops out to me when I think about Necromancer is the one with, it's a comic and there's this warrior and he's like, I'm going to avenge my brother. And then the elf is like, well, you have my bow. And the dwarf says, in my axe. And then the necromancer says, and your brother. And
that is a good one.
I can easily see a lot of people taking the necromancer into a bad direction, because it seems like one of those ones. But there's another line in here that I really love, which is where you have the others probably part, which is they secretly envy your talent and the mastery you've shown over death and undeath. They would never admit it, but if given a chance to prevent a loved one's fate or to at least speak with them one last time, they'd take it. And to me, that is an incredibly powerful part of necromancy that maybe kind of gets overshadowed by the fantasy of just like bringing back a bunch of zombies. But a lot of people who get into necromancy are probably doing it for, very good reasons. So it's really cool that you've managed to incorporate good ways to be a necromancer into the class.
So I have a little bit of a question. We've talked a lot of how steeped in Golarion lore this book is, because it absolutely is. And shout out, you should go pick this up, even if you have no intention of playing it, just to read some of the tie-ins to all of the lore and the different feats that tie in. It's really quite impressive in my opinion. But I'd be really interested to know what kind of real world influence you took when you were writing the Necromancer.
Sure. Honestly, I to an extent tried to avoid real world references to necromancy because I wanted to focus this specifically on Golarion. And down the road, if I write an addendum or a new version or a new book that relates to the Necromancer, I may include those closer to real world recognition. But for this one in particular, Golarion only has kind of a sideways tie into Earth itself through I think it's the Frozen Winter Throne or something. It's one of the adventure paths from first edition. But for the most part, everything in here is actually Golarion inspired. Even we have one of the options in here relates to Charon, the boat driver that takes people to the land of the dead. And in Golarion, he's actually a real character. People go to him for secrets of the dead and things like that, and they pay him, putting coins on the eyes of the dead to get his attention and talk to him about that. And I know that they do that in Greek mythology, but I didn't come at it from the angle of the Greek mythology. I took what was available to me through Golarion specific information.
You kind of incorporated real world stuff by proxy of Paizo already have incorporating some real world stuff into Golarion.
Kind of, yeah.
So we've talked a lot about, the broad concept of a necromancer and definitely the role of a necromancer in Golarion specifically. But now I want to talk about your necromancer. What makes your necromancer class so special? So, Barbarian has the rage ability. Investigators get to look at stuff real closely. What is the big standout features of your class?
Well, let's see. So just kind of starting from the front, the Necromancer itself, for anybody wondering, is a spontaneous spellcasting class. It has all of the things you would expect from such a class, 9th level, 10th level spellcasting, spontaneous spells, a spell repertoire, signature spells, things of that nature. When it really starts to kind of push into its own comes in with, we have Necrotic Touch, which is kind of it's sort of the harm version of the cleric's ability to heal or harm as they do, but it's harm specific, unless you're healing undead. Which is actually a point of reference is the fact that with advanced necromancy, which is another class feature that they have what's called the Severance of Power, which is all of their abilities that they get access to these different spell lists. Well, they can't actually restore hit points to living creatures without very specific means of doing so. And there's like a feat or two there that allows you to do it in kind of a gruesome way, you know. So you might actually stitch somebody's flesh together, but it's still going to not look great and stuff like that. But you can't actually heal anyone in a traditional sense. And
Sure.
so that helps to separate them out from those classes that get the spell lists with the ability to actually heal characters and stuff. And then after that, you know, their real breakout feature that is their own thing is their necromantic studies, which in other editions you might call an archetype or a subclass or something of that nature. And we have, I want to say 8 of those in here, each one from a different region of Golarion. You know, you've got Geb, Cabriri, Mazzali, and each of them has their own kind of tradition that's available to them. The class gets access to all 4 of the known traditions, occult, arcane, primal, divine. And they each give you your own, you get 2 special abilities whenever you pick them. One of them, for example, the Mazzali Necromancer is kind of they're a primal necromancer, and they get kind of like fire abilities that they get that kind of accent that region. And the Child King that they have there, who he was raised as a mummy, and he was originally an evoker with like a lot of fire magic, you know, but now he's undead, so it kind of incorporates that. And there's a lot of those that really help to make this class its own and let it stand apart from being in a party with a cleric and a wizard and a druid, and you're not going to say, oh, he's just one of those, but with undead.
He's a facelifted cleric or something like that.
Exactly.
They're going to feel like a necromancer.
Yeah. And for anybody...
It has a
sorry.
very distinct feel to it. Like, that is one of the things when I first was going through it, I was like, yeah, this has a necromancer feel. It didn't feel like a druid. Well, it didn't. Or a cleric or a wizard. It felt like a necromancer. And I liked that about it a lot.
I'm very glad to hear that. It was definitely one of my goals that I set when I went to write this, that I wanted to make sure it was its own, it could stand on its own too. And then anybody that does want to maybe incorporate or dabble in necromancy, from this point of view, there is always the multi-class archetype. And then also, if you're familiar with from Pathfinder Infinite, they have the Spell Trickster. I did actually, I spoke to Dustin Knight, who is the author of that. And actually, I believe he wrote the original section that went into the Grand Bazaar that kind of hinted at the Spell Tricksters, and then he expanded on it in Pathfinder Infinite. So that goes back to your mention that, you know, some of these people who work on the products, they do work for and with Paizo regularly. But he wrote the Spell Trickster, and I reached out to him and said, hey, you know, I really like the Spell Trickster. They don't have a lot of necromancer options, or necromancy options. What do you think if I was to include something like that here? And he loved the idea, and we worked it up, and that actually helped to build the iconic character who is introduced at the beginning of this book, Narisu Mashi. She is a gnomish necromancer, and she has just started her path down the Spell Tricksters, almost by accident.
So while we're talking about Narisu, can I just say that the art in this book just goes so hard? I absolutely love it. So fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about your process in terms of picking art and commissioning art and things like that?
Yeah. So one of the really fun things about this, and many of the products that I actually publish, is I take a lot of advantage of the Drive-Thru-RPG stock art library, which is surprisingly vast if you know what you're looking for and how to search it out. Every piece of art in here actually, from beginning to end, is stock art from that website, from Drive-Thru-RPG, including Narisu. So it's really cool because you look through a drive-through RPG, you're trying to find art and you find something, you type in Necromancer and you can find something by Alan Childers, who I probably butchered his name, but he actually created the art for Narisu, and I saw that and was like, oh, I need to incorporate her somehow. And it turns out after working everything out with Dustin for the Spell Trickster, I was like, oh, she's going to be perfect for that.
It is a very professional looking book, and like Beth said, the art goes super duper hard. But the thing that I want to point out, because I'm just that kind of nerd, is that with just some slight font differences, this looks like it could have been taken out of a Pathfinder 2e core rulebook somewhere. The layout is fantastic. Where things are when you're looking for class features for the Necromancer, you got that table. There's descriptions for where you're going to get the spells, what kind of spells. It really does feel just like a Paizo made product. So well done on that front. It is really gorgeous.
It even has the sample necromancers too.
Yeah.
So whenever you open up, a new class or anything in any of the Paizo published books, it will have like sample versions, and it has a piece of art that is tied with that sample class. Well, this had that too, and I absolutely loved that because there was a couple of feat trees that I was like, I'm not able to like visualize, and I wanted to sit there and I was going to build out a couple of necromancers, and then I kept scrolling and I was like, wait, I don't have to do that. It's right here. And it had artwork to go with it, so I loved it. I know we've talked a lot about the Necromancer. I want to actually briefly touch on something you said way back in the beginning of this interview, and that is, you mentioned the Book of Many Things. And that's where both the first edition Necromancer started and then the second edition one as well. Can you tell me a little bit more of like what it's like to write for the Book of Many Things? Where can people find that in terms of like how to suggest things, stuff like that?
So that process has evolved a bit since it first began. Originally, when I began the Book of Many Things, it was about 4 years ago, I kind of just went onto the various Facebook groups that I followed and said, hey, I'm going through a rough time. Does anybody have some ideas to help keep me busy? Maybe I can write some stuff up for you for Pathfinder. And if you enjoy it, we'll publish it and see what we do. And so got a lot of requests for some very interesting options and characters and races and classes and all those different things. And, it ended up filling like 200 pages of content. And ultimately I put all of those together and I published them on DriveThruRPG and a few other websites. There's like the Open Gaming Store and Paizo itself, actually, it's available. But it kept going, we finished the first one and I already had a backlog of requests from people that like, oh yeah, I want to, and I for the second one, because there's actually 3 volumes of the Book of Many Things right now that exist. And for the second one, I kind of consolidated a lot of the like video game centric requests and put it into that one, and called it the Shattered Worlds, which actually kind of bred the concept for me that to this day I'm actually still growing now is, and this is going to sound like something from MCU, but it actually was like 4 maybe longer years ago before even they started using the term. But we had like a multiverse of different options that come together from things like you could play Samus Aran and you could play Mega Man from those games and stuff. But yeah, so we put all of those together for Pathfinder, and now we have our Patreon, which is Names Games, and that is where I take the requests. I still have a backlog of requests I'm slowly working on as time permits, but over the years, time has less permitted. So I still take requests. We actually have 2 request spots open right now, and I do 5th edition, Pathfinder 1st edition, and Pathfinder 2nd edition. I can do Starfinder. I don't do it as often, but I am capable of doing so, and we actually published a Transformers race for Starfinder called the Mechanin. Yep. And that was actually in the 2019 annual collection. We've got 2019, 2020, 21, and now 22 that we're working on. We're right in the middle of that annual cycle. We go from April to March each year, releasing another 200-page book. So actually, I think now with that and the 3-5 versions of the Book of Many Things, I'm probably going on 6-7 years now
Wow.
of doing this.
Wow.
That's really
That is quite a lot of accolades.
Well, I I appreciate that. I guess I could. Yeah, I agree. But definitely, I do have the 2 spots open right now that are available for anybody that wanted to jump on and make some kind of a request.
So I'm going to ask you the impossible question for a creative, which is, what is your favorite part of this book? Whether it's one of the spells, one of the feats that you made, one of the ways that you made. What about this book, when you made it, you're like, yeah, that's good?
Yeah, actually, that is not as hard to think of as one might believe. My favorite part of the book was definitely being able to create the new necromantic studies that are specific to Golarion. So the original Pathfinder first edition version of the Necromancer, we have something like 12 or 13 necromantic studies that are all their own things. There's like blood necromancy and voodoo necromancy and true necromancy, dread necromancy, just to name a few. And going into this, I wanted to say, I definitely want to do something new. I didn't know at the time that I had 8 of them available to me, but it worked out, and I love them all. They're fun in their own different ways. They all have their own aspects, whether they focus on combat or exploration or role play. For the 3 different pillars, all of those things are available so that you don't feel like you're left out in any given part of the game. Created those, and I look forward to expanding those out with even more down the line whenever I translate the others to Pathfinder 2nd edition.
So I gotta tell you, my favorite is the Whispering Way, partially because Tar-Baphon is my favorite big bad villain of Pathfinder, and you got the feel of it like exactly right. Like it's all great to have the necromancer who's doing stuff for good, and the sympathetic hero. The Whispering Way is, to me, when you want to be that cheeseball kind of necromancer and just like really put on your Palpatine voice and be like,
do it.
Yes, I shall be siphoning the life out of you. And just going all ham. I love campy characters, and camp is a thing that I think is sorely underrated nowadays. But
Agreed.
yeah, just being able to go like all out on investing into the creepy kind of necromancer, the Whispering Way, I think, is the way to go.
Yeah, that one's a lot of fun because it gives you that chance to kind of be the necromancer that, yeah, okay, we're going to cut to the chase. This one's probably going to be evil. But your party is going to work with them because of some greater need to fight something else. Maybe the paladin isn't going to be happy if they're around, or the champion, but they still serve their purpose, and they have their reasons for doing what they do, just like any of them. They might even be using the Whispering Way against the Whispering Tyrant. Who knows?
Mhm.
So while we're talking about our favorites, you already mentioned mine, which was the Mazzali. Flame Necromancy, yes, please, sign me up. So because of that, I have to pick the Ergothoan study. The idea of like spreading disease and how, well, I'll get into it later, but the interactions you can have with the different Ergothoan feats that you can pick and just everything, it's perfection.
Well, thank you. That one's a fun one. I really liked learning about Ergothoa. I did not know about that goddess
love her.
before this project. So finding her and finding the art of her that they have available in the different mediums is so fun to see.
She is actually one of my favorites and has been for a really long time. There's also some capital A like fan art of her as well, and just of course I'm a big scythe person too, so you mean that gets to be my deity's favorite weapon? Yes, yeah, I'm in. Come on.
Absolutely.
So the book again is called Banned from the Boneyard, Golarion Necromancers. There's going to be a link to it in the show notes of this podcast again, cannot recommend enough. We're going to be deep diving into it in just a moment so that you can hear all the nitty gritty about this class. But Kevin, if people want to find more about you, more about your projects, where can they find more of Kevin?
We have our website, samuraisheepdog.com. I try to update that at least once a month with what's been going on, what new options we have and available on all of our different websites that we sell. We have our Patreon, again, is Names Games. But yeah, the Names Games Patreon is where you can go to get up to 4 years of content. If you want to get in on this year's cycle, it's April through March, so it'll be up through next year, 2023 March. And $10 will get you the whole thing. $20 will get you a request, and you can build your own race or your own class or whatever it is that you're interested in. And then, of course, I sell my products on DriveThruRPG, Pathfinder Infinite, Open Gaming, and Paizo.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Kevin. We're about to dissect the Necromancer. So make sure that you stay tuned after this brief message from our sponsor.
Hello, my name is James Beck from Eldritch Osiris Games. Eldritch Osiris Games is the first TTRPG workers co-op in history, specializing in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Eldritch Osiris Games is built on the foundation of giving voices to creative authors who don't normally have a roadmap into the publishing industry. We push forward as a diverse set of voices in the company, regardless of a person's identity. Part of the foundation is equality, with every person in the staff having a say on all important decisions the company makes. Being the first TTRPG co-op, we are here to set an example that workers' equality is not only possible, but instead become the industry standard. Basically, we're a group of nerdy friends who want to publish work for people to enjoy. You can find amazing work such as the Ironclad and Symbiote class, or dive into new ancestries like the Uplifted Bear. And if you're a GM, check out our amazing one-shots and bestiaries to spice up your combats and adventures. Find all of this and more on eldritchosirisgames.com or follow us on Twitter at eldritchosiris for constant updates. Well, I guess we should get the Rulelord talking again.
Welcome back to the adventure. Now is the section where Beth and I are going to take a deep dive into the Necromancer class. Really dissecting everything from the spells, the special features of it, to each of the individual spell classes. So, with that, let's get started.
No, but wait! Before we actually get into the class, I wanted to talk a little bit about something on Pathfinder Infinite that caught my attention this week. So I want to talk about a very interesting third-party ancestry. Now, this isn't necessarily something that I would do like a deep dive on, because it is pretty short, right? It's just a quote-unquote just an ancestry. But it is so cool, and the artwork immediately popped out of me. So this is Mary Bears by Calder Cadavid. And if there is a cartoon bear in your mind, I immediately went to Gummy Bears. So there was a TV show in the 90s called The Gummy Bears. Have you ever seen it?
Never seen it, but I did watch Ewoks a lot as a kid. I don't know if you...
Yeah, definitely different.
Yes, different, but also bears. Little bears.
Yeah, no, fair. I wonder if I bet there's like a feat somewhere in here where you could be like an Ewok type thing. Like, legitimately, it's so cool. So, if you wanted to be a Care Bear, it has kind of options that lean towards that. Obviously, not using Care Bear. It has options to be a Gummy Bear. It even has, what did it call? Bouncy Juice that you can craft, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. It has some really awesome feats, ancestry feats that are associated with it. You can be a belly rune bear, because of course you can, this is Care Bear. You could be a like Winnie the Pooh and be honey fed Mary Bear. The Juice Keeper, which is, Leaper's Elixir. That's what it's called. The bouncy juice is called Leaper's Elixir.
Oh, okay.
And I just absolutely love it. It's so whimsical. The art is amazing. The feats like really feed into that. I love things that are thematic, right? like that just absolutely go hard on a theme, still make logical sense, still have like things that will be useful in a general campaign, but when it comes down to it, they're still amazing for the theme. And this 10 out of 10, absolutely going to play a Mary Bear eventually. Just so fantastic, well written. Please, 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 please go buy it. At level 1, if you are well, actually, it doesn't even have a limitation. You can be any Mary Bear, and you can get a bottom bouncer. So, trigger, if you take damage from falling, you become remarkably bouncy and spry. You make an athletics check, and on a success, you stand and leap. On a critical success, you get to long jump or leap. And it's just so cool. Like, you can turn your fall damage into a bouncy, and it's just... It gives me all the vibes for just a whimsical character. Like, this would go really well in a group with a Shuni, and a Kobold, and just, no, I love it. I love it so much.
How dare you for interrupting me? But also, second, that reminds me of something that was actually given to me graciously by Jason Bullman, which was review copies of his Pathfinder 2nd edition hack, zombie apocalypse hack called Hope Finder, which I know zombies are like passe now, but I've never really gotten out of zombie-ness. Like, I loved The Walking Dead before it was turned into a TV show that absolutely butchered its amazing plot. Love World War Z before it made a movie that absolutely gutted the awesomeness that made that book amazing. Zombies are just awesome. And so the fact that you can not only play a zombie campaign with Pathfinder 2nd edition rules, but amazingly converted into the modern setting, while still having the Pathfinder 2e rule set, is really awesome. And I haven't gotten to play it yet. He sent me free copies of the Narrator's Guide and the Survivor's Guide. So I just want to put that out there that even though he gave me these free copies, I've looked over them. I authentically think it's really cool. I think that you should go pick it up if you are someone who wants to run that kind of campaign. Maybe even without the zombie part, if you're just kind of looking for inspiration about how to take Pathfinder 2e into a more modern setting, this book might help you out. But if you're like me and you would love to have a zombie apocalypse romp with a 3-action economy, this seems like a great conversion for you.
I'm totally in. The idea of a sort of more modern setting, or post-apocalyptic, dystopian, that kind of stuff, absolutely.
And like, of course, if you just want to have, a bunch of undead fight against your players, like that's a whole cool thing provided by Book of the Dead. But now with the Necromancer class, see that cool segue that I did to get us back on the topic?
I did,
With the Necromancer class, you can now bring undead even more into your fantasy, mystical, magical dragons who happen to be in dungeons kind of setting. So we are going to go over the class, and Beth is really going to take the wheel here because, like I said at the start, she is fantastic at really dissecting and analyzing each individual bit, but I do have some cool insights or, opinions every once in a while. Good opinions, I'll mind you from the start. But we are...
How dare you have opinions?
How dare I? Me, a straight white male man. The world needs more of my opinions.
I agree. I think that if it was just me prattling on for an hour about the class, it would get boring quickly. So I am always here for your opinions. Right away, with already, like, for those of you guys who don't listen to Deep Dive, one of the things that I typically go over are the basics, right? What do you get as your initial proficiencies, and that kind of thing. And already we're out the gate with something really interesting. So that's the saving throws. So trained in will, trained in reflex, expert in fortitude. So if you listen to the first part of the show, you already know this is caster class. right? We are going to be talking about spellcasting, here in like 20 minutes. Trained in will? What? Expert in fortitude?
Yeah, that's low for a caster.
Yes, it is in fact the only caster that is set up this way, where you are only trained in will and you are expert in fortitude, which is
That seems more like a
kind of
martial
awesome.
class.
It does, and there's definitely a reason for that. We'll get into why a little bit later. I think that is part of it, but also there's this physicality that comes with a necromancer, and you also see that with the hit points, right? So the hit points is 8 plus your Constitution modifier, which is again not unheard of, but high for a caster.
Right.
So there's this physicality that is automatically built in on the necromancer that I think is really interesting. So that not only are you building skeletons and zombies and raising the dead, but you're in some ways using yourself, right? So in order to perform necromantic acts, you have to be an expert in fortitude, right? Because if you can't handle it, well, your creations aren't going to make it. And that is just so cool.
It's a whole school of magic about putting the body to its limits. So it makes a lot of sense. There's definitely other reasons for having the fortitude so high, but it is definitely worth pointing out that this is a different kind of spellcaster than what you might be used to. In fact, it's very similar to what the kineticist is like with Paizo's recently released playtest, where it was sort of a spellcaster, but functioned a lot like a martial in its mechanics. And you can listen all about that in my interview with Vanessa Hoskins about the comparison between her kineticist and the Paizo one. But anyway, yeah, interesting observation.
Yeah, so keeping on down with the sort of what I call standard stuff, you're trained in perception. That's very standard. If we're talking about like a caster chassis that classes are built on, that's pretty normal.
Par for the course.
Exactly. You are trained in simple weapons and light armor, which is on par with like a cleric, right? So that's not unheard of. Key ability modifier, charisma only. Now, this I find to be very interesting, right? That you're a charisma caster as a necromancer, which I think feeds off of the idea that like clerics are wisdom casters, right? So you go off of charisma. I would have personally liked to have seen a charisma or intelligence. With that being said, you do have to pick your study or your spellcasting. So I could get the idea of like, well, that's just a lot to pick, right? And a lot to balance. So keying it to charisma only, I kind of understand. Of course, there's also a house rule. We're talking about third-party products. Let's talk about house rules too. There's actually a house rule that you could apply to every single one of your class that anybody just picks any key ability modifier.
Yeah.
You could play that way. So, I would think that with the Necromancer, have a conversation with your GM if you really want to do like an intelligence-based Necromancer. But charisma, like for the most part, makes sense.
This also seems like it could have been an interesting part to add in a constitution-based spellcaster, which we know is, again, kind of what the kineticist is doing, but in line with the fortitude part, someone who has to like kind of keep their body together, since most necromancer art is kind of like of an undead kind of person.
Right.
I don't know. To me, that could have been a little interesting too, but I get what you're saying.
I will say that if we're looking at this from like a balance perspective, that could be essentially like too many eggs in one basket, right? So Constitution is already going to be very important to you just because of your hit point total, and that you're a caster. Like when you get hit, you don't want to immediately die. But two, there's some other stuff we're going to talk about a little bit later that makes you want to have enough hit points to be able to sacrifice a bit, right? Putting too much reliance on that one stat could be a bit of a balancing factor. Additionally, when we're talking about the playtest for Kineticist, it definitely had that sort of melee chassis that I always like to talk, right? Like its saving
Right.
throws were very in line with a melee character. And so, as much as the third party one, published by Vanessa, is a caster, that one isn't. And so it, to me, is kind of interesting that this takes a different route to that.
Sure.
So while we're talking about spellcasting, let's talk about what kind of spellcaster it is. So you are a spontaneous caster. You have something called necromantic spellcasting, which means that you just automatically get all necromancy spells.
Yes.
Which is really kind of that is under advanced necromancy.
It's one of the coolest features that Kevin incorporated, and as I'm sure you're about to mention, made a point of listing out up to this point of release all of the necromantic spells from all of the first party books up to and including the Dark Archives.
Yeah, so it's kind of just a quick reference of, hey, here's your spell list. Now, with your magical tradition that you pick later on, because this is one of those classes that you get to pick your magical tradition, you also get those spells, right? Like you normally can pick from them, but the necromancy spells just automatically are your spell list. And let's be real here, that's what you're going to pick 90% of the time anyway.
I mean,
Now,
like, why would you be a necromancer and choose, I don't know, a hydraulic push or whatever? A water spell? Are you kidding me?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. You wouldn't. Of course there are some things that like just are really fantastic utility spells and stuff like that I'm sure people would want on their list. Yeah, there's stuff that comes up. But when it comes down to it, you're gonna put a bunch of necromancy spells on your spell list. So let's just be real.
Right.
Now, I will say that your access to all of this necromantic power comes at a price. That's literally a line out of the book. And that is severance of power. So you cannot use your necromancer spell slots to cast spells that restore hit points. Now, if you get spell slots from like an archetype or something else, you can use those just fine.
Right.
But anything that you get from necromancer cannot restore hit points to living creatures.
Yes.
So your necromancer is not typically, we'll talk about options later, but it's not typically going to be your healer, right? It's just not their jam. It's not the
There
vibe.
are ways you could do it with, of course, treat wounds, medicine checks, potions, but you're not going to be casting heal.
Exactly. No, definitely not. You're definitely going to be casting harm a lot. And that comes from an ability called Necrotic Touch. Now, Necrotic Touch is very similar, but not to be mistaken with, the ability that clerics get called Divine Font. So, Necrotic Touch allows you to cast harm as an additional spell slot each day, equal to 1 plus your Constitution modifier.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. I told you Constitution was going to be super important to you, and that is because you're necrotic touch. So essentially, just like Divine Font, you get a bunch of extra harm spells that you can cast. Now, it does have some limiters on it, which I found very interesting. First level, you can actually only cast the 1 action harm spell. So you can't extend it to the 2 action or the 3 action, right? Which gives it a range and gives it a burst effect.
Right.
You can still use metamagic feats, but you can't cast it using the multi-action stuff. Until level 5. So level 5, you can cast it using the 2 action version of harm, and then at 9th level, you can cast the 3 action level. So this is to balance a little bit of the fact that harm is an incredibly potent spell, and you're able to cast it. Let's be real here, you're going to be putting Constitution as your secondary stat like 5 times a day, which is bananas. So,
Yeah.
that's just a little bit of a limiter on.
So you're going to have to walk up to a lot of people, give them a poke, which
Correct.
is going to, for a spellcaster, put you into a lot more of harm's way than a spellcaster typically wants to be. You usually want to be behind the big bulky fighter, but the necromancer, to really get utility out of their harm ability, needs to be walking up to people and sucking the life out of them.
Yeah, exactly. So that is already why, we have that little bit higher of a constitution modifier. One, we have a ability that keys off of it. And two, we're going to be up in people's faces, right? So that's why we have the light armor proficiency. If you get free archetype, which is one of my favorite house rules, or not house rules, alternative rules. Variant, thank you. Words. Free archetype is like amazing. You are going to want to try to get maybe medium or heavy armor proficiency out of that. That might be the focus that your character goes. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but definitely an option. So necrotic touch is, in my opinion, like one of the coolest things. And actually, when we get to the feats, you'll see that there's a lot of feats that actually build off of that as well.
Right.
And then, of course, with the rest of the spell casting you get, you get essentially 3 spells for every level that you can cast, your spell level. So, at 5th level, you still get access to 1st, 2nd, and 3rd level spells. You just have these harm spells on the side as well.
Right.
Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So you're going to have a lot of spells that you can do as a spellcaster. It's not just going to be harm. Like the wizard or cleric, your spells keep on going up, unlike, magus or summoner, where you only have like a couple spells that you get per level. You're going to have a huge list. So don't worry, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you can do.
Oh, definitely. In my opinion, one of the things that this class excels at is knowing what to do in a given moment, which is usually hurt people. Let's be real here. Like, this is a Pathfinder campaign. That's what we're doing 90% of the time. Necromancer just cuts out all the middlemen and casts harm, which I absolutely love. So that is kind of all of the basic little bits of the class, right? You level up your features just like you normally would. You eventually will have access to level 10 spells. The thing that I really want to get into now are the necromantic studies, right? So every class in Pathfinder has the subclass, the thing that makes you unique, right? The rogue has its rackets, the cleric has its doctrines.
Mm-hmm.
For a necromancer, that is the necromantic studies. Now, the thing that is absolutely bananas to me, there are 8 of them in this class.
Which is a lot.
That's so many. It's so many. Additionally, like we talked about a little bit earlier, because this is part of the Infinite Masters line, it is so steeped in lore. There are so many things. It's kind of crazy, right? How much lore is referenced in this book.
Yeah, these are not just like, placeholder necromancers or, the very base level of what you would think a necromancer is. The Urgothan necromancer is going to feel like an Urgothan necromancer. It's not just bring people back from the dead necromancer or the, looks like a dead person necromancer. These are going to feel like the school of magic in which they're emulating from Pathfinder lore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're going to get into each and every one of these because they're all really interesting. And I want to give them each just a little bit of time to talk about. So we're going to start with
real quick.
Gabite.
Do you want to go into what a dominion is? I think you did that.
Oh, yes, I did. You're right. So before we talk about individual necromantic studies, I do want to mention that each one of the studies gives you access to 2 dominions. So dominions are something unique to the necromancer. but only kind of, right? They're very similar to a cleric's domain. And in fact, dominions that are the same name as a domain, you would take the rules and the spells from that original resource as your dominion. You just call them dominions, and additionally, you don't have the deity requirements. Okay, so in my opinion, they're even better.
No big bad boss looking down at you, judging everything that you do. Especially
Exactly.
that pesky Pharasma being all
Absolutely
judgy
not.
about the life and death and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. So yeah, so if I mention the dominions that they get access to, one, you still have to take it through a feat, just like cleric. So cleric has to take domain initiate, you have to take dominion initiate. So just keep that in mind. These are the ones you get access to if you were to pick up that feat. Now, when we get to the feat section, I'm going to say is one of the best feats. So definitely keep that in mind. So now we want to talk about the individual necromantic studies. So first up is the Gebite. So this is our first of the arcane traditions, which is pretty great. Obviously, everything is going to be related to Geb and clap.
It's my stupid joke. Every time I see Geb, I think of Jeb Bush.
Oh,
who's like,
yes! Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Please clap.
I say it every single time in my mind. Geb.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Oh, don't disrespect Geb that way, bro. No. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. Anyway, so the Geb Necromancer really has this feel of a healer with the undead. Like I said, it's arcane tradition. The skill that you're gonna automatically get and that levels up with you is Arcana. I guess I didn't really talk about that, but you do get essentially a skill with every necromantic study that you become trained in. So every necromantic study is going to give you a skill. For this one, it is arcane, which totally makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The dominions are magic and perfection. Totally anything you know about Geb, you know that those were going to be the dominions. And then you get a couple of special abilities. So the first is you get Touch of Undeath, which is a focus spell. So you automatically get a focus point with that, and then you get this Touch of Undeath focus spell.
I'm just reading it real quick.
Yeah, I think it's on archives. Yeah, it is. Okay, so this is originally a cleric, so you would add the necromancer tag to it as well. It essentially allows you to target life force itself, and then you do negative damage. So kind of cool, nice little focus spell. Obviously it heightens every level, and so once you actually get up in level, it does a decent amount of damage too. Then you get an ability called the Quick and the Dead, which I really love that because I grew up in a very religious household, and there was we would cite the Lord's Prayer, and there's a line in there, the quick and the dead. So anyway, I thought that was funny.
I was thinking of the Fast and the Furious.
I love the dichotomy of that. Those are very two different resources or references, and I am here for it. Love it. Now all I have is family stuck in my head. So the Quick and the Dead gives you access to the Stitch Flesh. Try that again. The Quick and the Dead gives you access to the Stitch Flesh skill feat, and you can use Arcana to treat wounds, but only of the undead. So the Gebite Necromancer is really your undead healer, and I absolutely love it. Then at 5th level, this is still under Quick and the Dead, when you use Arcana to treat wounds, or you use your necrotic touch, right, you can heal one willing living creature's flesh. But doing so makes the target look undead. So, you got this human buddy that you're traveling around, and some reason he really likes you, and you're like, whatever, dude. And he's like, yeah, I'm bleeding from my chest here. Like, fine, go ahead and heal me. you can do that, but they now look undead, right? Their pallor goes green or blue, their skin becomes sunken. And when they go to the inn, they're going to actually take a circumstance bonus on diplomacy checks, to make an impression on living creatures, because there is this like stigma on the undead, right? So I just absolutely thought that was hilarious, that yes, you could heal your human buddy, but he's going to take a negative. So do you actually want to heal him? I don't know.
And just to be clear, the word that they use is undead mien, which for people who look into it, that's what it means. Mien means appearance. So there we go. We just saved you a Google search.
Yes, yeah. No, I really, I loved that he used that word, actually. I haven't seen that in a while. And then finally, under advanced studies, so this is something that you get, I think it's at 5th level.
An advanced study?
Yes.
7th.
7th level. So you get your advanced study at 7th level, which it gives you something called undead form. So you get to choose any of the battle forms. So aerial form, animal, dinosaur, humanoid, or pest. So any of the level appropriate ones. And you get to add that to your spell book, right? Which is great. Just as you would normally cast a spell, you can cast this instead. Additionally, you can actually use one of your extra spell slots from Necrotic Touch to cast this, which is also pretty cool. So
that's not the coolest part.
No, definitely not. So when you cast this battle form on yourself, you appear as the skeletal or zombified version of that. So you pick bear, you become a zombie bear. You pick bird, you become a skeletal bird, which is just amazing. You get the undead trait, and you get a skeleton or zombie ability of your choice, such as like feast or screaming skull.
So cool.
So cool. So I absolutely love this. I think that the fact that you can take a battle form is really great. I have like personal beef with some of the like battle form rules. So, definitely keep that in mind, that like battle forms can get a little weird, but especially if you take extra feats, if you spec in a druid, your battle form could really be amazing. But even beyond that, this could be something that helps you out, right? It could be a utility spell for you as well, especially if you took pest form. All right, you're gonna get the fly ability. You're gonna be able to get into areas that maybe your normal form couldn't. Also, I just imagine you would pick the skeletal, so pest form, you would pick the skeletal version, and you would just be the husk of a cicada.
Oh, yeah. Those are so gross.
It's so gross. And I just absolutely love that idea of like you just flying around as this husk of a bug of some sort. No. I just think thematically, perfection.
If you've never seen the husk of a cicada, it looks exactly like the normal one. It's just huge and stays exactly where it was. And it takes you a moment to be like,
oh, that's not a real bug.
Is that real? It's not moving. It hasn't moved. But the thing is, that's exactly how real cicadas are too.
Yeah, except they're also loud as hell.
Yeah, they're loud as hell. But when you go up to figure out if one is real, you're taking a 50-50 shot of this is either a husk or it's going to, expand its wings and fly at your face. So
yeah.
Personally,
they're super creepy.
If I was to take this, definitely going dinosaur form and just being a giant T-Rex skeleton all the time, as much as possible.
Yeah, for sure. Like dinosaur form would be really cool. And a zombified T-Rex, absolutely, 100% here. Next is the Cabrian Necromancer. So this is all surrounded around ghouls, which is really, really awesome. And of course the Cabrian Priest King. Cabrie Priest King. Again, all of these are like references to Golarion lore.
Mhm.
I'm going over mostly deep diving into the mechanics of it, but just understand, like, start going onto the wiki or pulling up your reference books. The Lost Omens guides are absolutely great for this. AKA the Impossible Lands one. Go pick it up. It's really awesome. But anyway, like, and just start reading about this stuff, right? So the lore is absolutely amazing. Just be aware of that. But anyway, the Cabrian Necromancer is has the occult tradition. You do get the occultism skill, and then the dominions you get are knowledge and vigil. So because this is all surrounding about ghouls, right? That's kind of the Cabrian thing are ghouls. The first thing that you get is ghoulish transformation. So whenever you use your necrotic touch, you gain a claw attack for 1 minute. And you can actually take feats to buff that up as well. If you get the ghoul archetype, which was in Book of the Dead, your claws gain the backstabber and fatal traits.
Ooh.
Instead. Yeah. So I love that it actually had a, like, hey, if you already can become a ghoul, here's how you improve. So I think that's really cool. Right. And it still has that same, like, 1 minute duration time. And you still have to cast Necrotic Touch to get access to those as a ghoul, which I think is cool. Then at 3rd level, this is still under Ghoul Transformation, you get Ghoulish Cravings, which is a spell. You get to add that to your spell repertoire, so you could cast that with all of your spell slots. And then at 5th level, you also get Jaws.
To get to bite people.
Yep, you get to bite people, you do additional damage, they get the grapple and trip traits, and again, if you have the ghoul archetype, you actually treat a crit failure as a failure instead, for grapple and trip. Which is great, right? Because if you try to trip somebody and you crit fail, you trip instead. So it's always nice to have something that's like, no, I don't. I just fail. Then your advanced studies is Fever Touch. So this is a 1-action ability that you gain at 7th level, where your last action was to cast harm. So it can be the first, the 1-action version of that, or the 2-action. And you have to have 1 use of Necrotic Touch remaining. Now I will note, it says your last action was to cast harm. That does not mean you had to have used Necrotic Touch. You could have used your regular spell slots, okay? So just keep that in mind. So, you spend 1 use of Necrotic Touch and cast Ghoulish Cravings on the same target. So essentially, you cast harm on somebody, and then you, as a 1-action, get to cast Ghoulish Cravings on that same target. Now, good news about that, right, is Ghoulish Cravings is a 2-action spell, typically.
Yes. So you're getting 2 for 1, basically.
Get 2 for 1, yes, but they still have to make their save. So that's the downside, is they still have to make that fortitude save.
Yeah, but who's good at fortitude? Only everyone.
I mean, it might be the most common save, a high save for most monsters, but
yeah,
I still think it's a pretty cool interaction. The fact that you can cast harm and then immediately cast Ghoulish Cravings as an extra action.
Right.
So yeah, the Cabrian Necromancer definitely has ghoul vibes, which is great. I will say that one of my sort of downsides to this is that, you know, your harm spell is already going to be limited to the 1-action version anyway, up until level 5. So, you know, you're going to be up in combat, which is why you kind of get the claws anyway. But then you start to kind of have to pick a secondary stat or a tertiary stat, right? Because you've already invested in charisma, because that's your primary casting stat. You've already invested in constitution, because that's how you get your necrotic touch. And now you're going to have to either pick, probably going to be dex, to make your claws worth it. So like,
Right.
just kind of understand that this is giving you like a combat option, which is great to have, but you're never going to be dealing as much damage as like your fighter, right? So just like, you're never going to be slashing somebody's throat open, doing, 50 points of damage at early levels. Just, set your expectations to the reasonable.
Yeah.
Additionally, with Fever Touch, I do wish that it was a free action, which I understand would be very powerful. I do get that. But I feel like, one, you have to cast harm then with the 1 or 2 levels. You can't cast harm with your 3 action, which is kind of the limiting factor, right? Like that's to make sure that you're not doing like a 30-foot emanation and then you're casting ghoulish cravings on everybody as well. And I get that. But it puts a bit of a limiter on that. And like, because it's so action economy dependent, I find it's definitely not going to be something that you do all the time. But
you could combine it
still
with
very good.
You could combine it with the ghoul archetype, like you said, which
for sure.
then gives you like a bunch of cooler options as far as like getting physically in people's faces, plus having the abilities provided to you by this class. So
no, for sure. Yeah, no, I definitely I like it a lot. It's not my favorite. We're gonna actually just now talk about my favorite, but it is pretty good.
Yeah.
So next is the Mazzali Necromancer. And we already mentioned it, but it is my absolute favorite. So the whole thing with the Mazzali Necromancer is coupling fire with the undead, which traditionally have not always gone together. So this is amazing. And the fact that you just are this force of negative and fire energy is just so cool. So this is a primal tradition, which makes sense, right? We're talking about elemental abilities.
Right.
The necromantic skill is society, which is very interesting to me. It's kind of a cool touch, right? Because up until now, it's just been the caster skill, right? So it was arcana, it was occultism, now it's society. So, which is really cool. And then it gives you the ambition and fire dominions, which totally, like, fire, obviously, right? Of course. So then you get, the first ability you get is Burning Touch. This is right at first level. When you cast harm using Necrotic Touch, okay? So this is one of the times where it actively says, no, you can't use your regular spell slots. It has to be your Necrotic Touch spell slots, and a living target fails or critically fails its fort save, it's going to take persistent fire damage as well. And for every level that it is heightened, which harm heightens every level, that persistent fire damage increases by a d4. So even at level 3, if they fail their save, they're taking 3d4 persistent fire. That is legit amazing.
Absolutely fantastic version of the class for goblins.
Oh, absolutely. Like that is just, oh, you mean that I can do negative energy and I can set things on fire? Absolutely. Yeah. No. That's so good. Like, it could not be better. Oh wait, yes it can. Because at 5th level, you can actually choose to make all of harm's damage and persistent damage as fire or as negative. So every time you cast harm, again, as Necrotic Touch, that's the limiter on here, you can actually choose it as all fire, all negative, or the initial damage is negative and the persistent is fire. This is excellent when you are fighting other undead, right? Because now you have the flexibility of, I'm going to burn you or I'm going to do negative damage.
Right.
I love it. Love it. I love things that give you flexibility, and that is such a cool ability. My favorite. So, quote unquote, that's all for Burning Touch, which, trust me, is enough. It's great. So then at 7th level, you get Necrotic Strike. So you can use Necrotic Touch to cast a Necrotic Strike. This functions as the Flame Strike spell, except it deals 66 fire damage and has a range of 60 feet until it is heightened at least 5th level. Because the flame is infused with necrotic energy, creatures only apply half their usual fire resistance. Oh, I'm sorry. You thought you were immune to my fire? No, you're not. You only use your saving throw as one better. You actually still take my fire damage. I love this. Plus the fact that you essentially get Flame Strike to be your new Necrotic Touch. So instead of casting Harm, you now get to cast a modified version of Flame Strike, which is just really, really cool.
My players would absolutely hold this over my head anytime that I thought that I was finally having a creature that got to, one up them. They would pull this out and be like,
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Like in the original Jurassic Park. Yeah, that's fantastic. I just absolutely love this idea of primal necromancy. I just think it's so cool. And taking the fire aspect of it is just perfection. So
yeah, it's almost like a fire beyond fire kind of thing, like a true primal sort of fire or something that even things that know fire are part of fire, like even they can't withstand. So that's awesome flavor.
And I love the idea that like narratively you could talk about how your flames actually burn black or purple or green, right? Because they have that negative energy infused with them. It is pretty much amazing. Definitely my favorite. So next is the Osirian Necromancer. So a little bit just about Osirian. They are typically very much against necromancy. Because many people from Osiria worship Pharasma. And it is a sort of desert culture and environment. So very much everything having to do with the sun, which leads me to the dominions you get, which is healing and sun, which is again very, very appropriate for that, where that necromancer is from. So this is a cult tradition. This is the necromantic skill of medicine. So we've got another healer on our hands here, which totally makes sense again for Osirian culture. And as your first level ability, you get counter necromancy. You gain the counter spell feat. You can counteract any effect with the necromancy and negative traits using any necromancy spell.
Which, if you know about the counterspell rules in Pathfinder, you might groan at this a little bit. But, the more that I've actually gotten to do it with my players, the more countering makes sense. Which is basically, what's the spell level that they're casting at? What's your spell level? Is it higher or lower? Okay. And then casting a spell attack to beat the DC. If you beat the DC, you just have to see how much your rate of success can actually impact a spell if it's higher than yours. That's the quick and easy of counteract. So don't be immediately discouraged by this class, I would say.
Oh, for sure. I also would say that allowing any necromancy spell to be used as the counter gives you extra flexibility, right? Because normally you have to essentially use the same spell, and you're like, no, I get to use any necromancy spell, which is great. I will also say, counterspelling is highly underused in all of my Pathfinder games, so I would love to see somebody who is actually focused in on counterspelling, and this definitely allows you to do so, which I think is cool.
And you know what big spell has the necromancy trait on it that
Heal?
you would get to heal every single time that someone wanted to heal, any bad guy that wanted to heal themselves or something, you'd be like, nope.
The big boss has a cleric underling that keeps healing him. No, he doesn't. Which is
Not so fast.
so so Osirian too, because like they typically hate necromancy, so this idea that you use necromancy to counter other necromancers, oh,
Mhm.
perfection. Love it.
Yeah.
Then at 5th level, you don't expel the spell slot until you know the result of your counteract check.
So
So
you get
this
to
allows
save your
you
spell.
exactly, and it allows you to use lower level spell slots with higher checks. So like if you know you're gonna succeed on a with a 2nd level spell, well, that's all you need to use. Even
Mhm.
if you weren't sure if you were gonna have to use a 4th level or not.
Right.
Love that. And it actually literally spells that out in the text that that's what you can do, which is amazing. Love stuff like that. Then you also get Harm Undead. When you cast Harm using Necrotic Touch, you can choose to deal force damage to undead creatures. You still can't heal living creatures with it, but it gives you added flexibility when you're fighting undead.
Right. Because any other time that you would use the harm spell, it deals negative damage, which undead famously heal with. So, in a game like something that you would get from Book of the Dead, the harm spell would be kind of ineffective, at least against other zombies. But this way, you actually can hurt them.
Exactly, which I just think is really great. And then finally, and this we're still on the abilities you get at level 1, by the way. And finally, you get Osirian Blessing. So when this is kind of conditional, which is why it doesn't feel like super overpowered or anything.
Mhm.
If you take the Dominion Initiate feat, right? That's how you get access to Dominions. For the healing domain, you can cast those spells without Severance of Power restriction, even though they're from your necromancy abilities.
So you finally get to be the healer.
Exactly. So earlier when I said, most of these necromancers with that Severance of Power, you don't actually get to heal. This is one of the exceptions to that. This really is built to be sort of that supplemental healing that can really make or break parties. So no, it's absolutely fantastic that they get that. And it fits well with the sort of Osirian lore.
Right.
So then at 7th level with your advanced studies, you get Death Warden. You gain the Death Warden feat, which grants you resistance to negative damage. This is one of those things that, again, if you're fighting a bunch of other necromancers, that could be really helpful. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's not many abilities that's going to give you resistance to negative damage other than the Death Warden feat. So that's really great. Personally, it was a little underwhelming, right? Because like up until this point, all of the level 7 abilities were kind of cool, right? Like the Mazzali one, you got Necrotic Strike, where you got Flame Strike, and the Cabrian one, you got Fever Touch. And the Gebite got Undead Form, right? Which is really cool. And this one just kind of felt like it's good. Don't get me wrong. Like the Death Warden feat is absolutely good. It just was like, oh, okay. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
It was just like a little not as flashy as the other ones, but very
Sure.
practical. And we like a practical ability in this house.
Yeah. I mean, like, this would be a great feat, again, for that heavily undead kind of campaign where negative damage is probably getting thrown left, right, and center. And now, on top of being able to heal, on top of being able to use your harm to hurt zombies, now you get to resist some of that. And like, yeah, sure, it's not a big giant flame that you get to shoot out of your hands, but like you have now just become almost immortal in a land of the undead. So yeah, it's still good, even though it's not a huge Kamehameha power. Sure.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, with the Osirian Necromancer, it's like definitely the not the odd one out of the bunch, but it's definitely like the anti-necromancer necromancer, or the I'm not really a necromancer, right? Like this is somebody who might lie to themselves about actually being a necromancer too.
Sure.
Which would
I'm
be
not
very
like those-
fun roleplay wise.
those other necromancers.
Right, exactly. Like, excuse me, I am much better than that. Don't lump me in with them. But still kind of hilarious to me. So next we have the Shinman Necromancer. And this is one that I just absolutely loved this. It is the other primal option. And when I'm going to be talking about these abilities, they definitely are going to seem more social, a little more, like, out of encounter mode, more in exploration mode, dependent. And when I first read this through, I'll be honest, this was probably my least favorite one. But the more that I've read on Spectre Wood, and the Gossamer Path, and the more I've learned about what the Shinman Necromancer stands for, I've really grown to love it even more. So, definitely some cool abilities. So, at first level, you're going to before that, like I said, it's primal. You get nature as your necromantic skill. Totally makes sense. And then your dominions are going to be fate and swarm, which again just make a lot of sense for where these come from. So at first level, you're going to get Speak with Dead. Gain a Speak with Dead action. And starting at 5th level, this is typically it is a once per day ability. You can at 5th level you can actually do it every 10 minutes, and you can spend a focus point to do it again before that timer is up. So essentially, it can become use it twice for a focus point, which is kind of cool. But yeah, you speak with dead, right? You have to be able to interact with a skull or spirit of a creature with whom you share language, and you can ask them up to 3 questions. Again, not necessarily something you're going to use mid-combat, but something that could give you a lot of information, especially in some of those social campaigns. I would love to see this used in the Agents of Edgewatch, right?
Yeah.
So in that campaign, there are some people who you find their bodies, you could find their family members, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of potential here.
This also works for the players who do, at least in 1st edition, probably my most annoying player hack, which is kill the bad guy, tie them up, and then revivify them. Yeah, and then interrogate them for hours. And it's like, no, you killed him. In 2nd edition, when an enemy hits 0, they're dead. So it's like, yes, finally. But this kind of brings it back where at the end, when they're all dead, the person gets to cast this and do their little bits of interrogation. But thankfully, it's only 3 questions rather than,
exactly
5 hours of intimidation rolls.
Yeah, which is still really, really great. Additionally, you could use this to sort of interrogate mid-combat. Be like, what's your weakness, buddy?
Yeah,
could use
it does
it that
have
way,
1 to
which is
3
kinda cool.
actions. What did you do for the 3 action? I couldn't figure that out.
It allows you to ask the 3 questions, right? So every question you ask requires an action.
Gotcha. Okay. It's a really quick question, considering a round is 6 seconds.
Yeah, no, for sure. The target can answer simple questions about itself, as well as questions about anything that may have witnessed in the area in the last 24 hours. Does not make them friendlier than normal. And so cunning targets are likely to be terse, evasive, or refuse to answer at all. So, it doesn't guarantee answers, which again is why I probably wouldn't use it in combat, but you do you.
Yeah.
Then at 7th level, you get Talking Corpse, which is essentially the same thing, only extended, right? You can cast that on a corpse, and you can ask them about their life and all kinds of stuff. That it goes as a focus spell and does increase your focus point pool by 1.
Yeah. So
yeah.
To me, kind of the options that we've gone over, the more underwhelming, let's say. But I could easily see taking this with the investigator dedication, for example, and being able to be like a what's it called, like a medium detective, where you're the one who gets to go around or oh no, what's the show? Dead Like Me, where they go back and talk to dead people for a little bit, or even a better show, Pushing Daisies. Oh my god, that was such a charming show.
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, like I'm not sure that this is the class for me to go in completely, but like with some other working around, investigator, or who's another one that does talking really well, bard. Yeah, I could see this being a fun class.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry, I got distracted by something. I apologize. I need to remember to mute Discord, otherwise, everybody will just message me.
No problem.
Just how it goes. All right. So next, by the way, we'll be coming back to the Shinneman Necromancer when we talk about feats, because there's a whole line of feats that go with this that also augment what you can do from a more combat standpoint. So keep that in mind. We'll get back.
All right.
But for now, we're going to move on to the Spirit Singer. Spirit singing is so cool. So this is inspired by Ulfin Champions and the Valkyries, Valenhall, which is all very loosely based on Norse mythology. So this is really cool. And this is a divine tradition. With a necromantic skill of performance, it's a spirit singer, of course it's performance, with the dominions of confidence and might, which I love that. So this is definitely going to be your battle necromancer. So at first level, you get Ulfin training. So you get a shield block reaction. You're trained in medium armor. And you get to be trained in either a battle axe, a bow staff, or a longsword. Whenever your proficiency ranks in armor or weapons increases, your proficiency with those also increase, right? Which, super great. At 5th level, you gain weapon specialization, and at 15th level, you get greater weapon specialization. So you are the type of necromancer who's gonna get in people's faces, right? You are gonna beat people up with your battle axe and then raise them as skeletons.
Yep.
Here for it.
Fighter necromancer.
Exactly. Which, speaks for itself, but is also just kind of fun.
Yeah.
At 7th level, you get Necrotic Blade. Now, this is really cool. If your last action was a successful melee strike, and you have at least one use of Necrotic Touch remaining, so this is very similar to the Cabrian one that we talked about earlier.
Right.
You use a Necrotic Touch to cast harm on the same target without triggering reactions. So you hit somebody with your battle axe, which takes a single action. This ability takes 2 actions. So just can't do it in the same round that you move. Sorry. You are casting a spell, which again has the manipulate trait. Yeah, not everybody has attacks of opportunity anymore, but a lot of creatures, especially at higher levels, still have it. So you still gotta be careful. And the target counts as having failed its fort save. Although if you crit your first attack, it fails its save automatically.
And that to me is the big reason for doing this rather than like a separate melee strike plus harm, is that automatic fail of the fortitude save. You're basically getting, free damage at that point.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely is a sync in terms of actions, right? Because you have to have the melee strike, and it specifies melee, so you can't do this with bows and arrows or anything either. And then it uses 2 actions to cast that harm. But you're already in melee, right? So technically, you could just use harm normally, but they don't get that fort save. And that's the benefit of it, is the fact that they don't even get that fort save. So I think it's very thematic, and I think that especially if you're going for a more like melee focused build, this is the way to go. Like if you're gonna be a melee style necromancer, spirit singer, go for it. Have fun. It's pretty great. It's I hate to say it, but I really like a lot of these. And the more that I've had time to like read each one, the more I love them. So like, I'll be honest, like I said earlier, the Shinman Necromancer, I was like probably my least favorite. It probably still is, but not really. Like, I love all of them. They're all really thematic and great, and I just feel like there's a ton that you could do with it. So
they
I
all
really like
have
this one.
they all have a purpose, a vibe to them, and yeah, it really makes it great that you can find a niche for your necromancer in this book. Like, if it's a social campaign, absolutely, Shenmue necromancy, and maybe even not, but maybe it's one with more intrigue. That's still a viable option. Maybe you're in like Fist of the Ruby Phoenix and stuff where spellcasting is good, but maybe you want to be someone who's more fighter. Then
Hands-on.
absolutely, spirit singing necromancer is going to be right up your alley. So, you know, not everything has to be creepy skeleton looking guys with horns raising the dead, but there is definitely that place too. So it's great that there's a variety of choices here, which is famously what makes Pathfinder such a great game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think that so many of these things can fit in at your table, and the more and more I read about the Necromancer, the more I'm like, if I ever get to play, this might be the class that I play. All right, but moving on, we have my second favorite. Trust me, it's close, but this one's still pretty good. And it is the Urgathoan Necromancer. Now, as we talked about earlier, Urgathoa is one of my absolute favorite deities. She's the deity of pestilence and is known as the Pallid Princess. Her artwork is right above her chest, and her arms are fully human, right? She has dark hair and pale skin. And then right below her chest, she is a zombie. Or really a skeleton. And so, hold on one second.
Sure.
Okay, sorry.
Aw, kitty.
Yeah, sometimes my cat is very annoying, and I don't think he's gotten dinner yet. So, he just clawed my leg. But anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so above her chest, she looks like a pale human woman with dark black hair, and pale skin, dark eyes, and then below her chest, she is a skeleton, with actually her entrails and blood are dripping down, from her rib cage. And it is just so good. And the community has put out such great artwork of her as well. And usually you see her like leaning on her scythe, which is just so cool. It's so cool. And her symbol is actually, a moth with a skull on its wings. I'm obsessed. I love her so much.
There's
I'm a huge...
some great memes of Urgathoa just kind of like coyly looking at Pharasma being like, what are you going to do?
What up?
I exist.
Yeah, I would 100% love to read a short story of like interactions between the two of them. It'd be so great. Really fun. But anyway, so the Urgathoan Necromancer is our other divine necromancer. 1 second. Which gets the religion skill. So, nothing like super crazy there. For your dominions, you get indulgence and plague, which both are just so perfect for the theme. Absolutely love it. So at first level, you are able to cast Goblin Pox, so you add that that spell to your repertoire. And then at third level, you actually get Ghoulish Cravings, which we've talked about a little bit earlier. Goblin Pox is one of my absolute favorite diseases that players can cast. It's a lot of fun. And very useful. Then you have Communicable Harm. This is, again, you get at first level. So when you cast Harm on a creature, that is from Necrotic Touch or from your spell list, either one. Any creature within 5 feet that failed against your harm spell within the last minute must also save against the effect if they haven't already. So essentially, I know that's a lot to kind of process. Mm-hmm. Essentially, this is a ramp-up effect. Every time you cast harm, you're going to want to target another creature. And then as you level up, your range gets bigger and bigger. But you essentially then can cast harm against two things, even using the one actions version of it, right? You still have to be able to touch that initial creature, but then say one of them moves away, just, takes a step action away from you. Well, tough luck, buddy. You're still getting affected by my harm that I'm going to cast next.
It flows exactly with the plague pestilence vibe of this one. Is you are spreading a disease in the same way that like a chain lightning effect would go, but in this case it's harm rather than COVID-19 or something.
Yeah, right? That is definitely the vibe here. So at 5th level, you actually are able to cast harm from the space of any creature that has failed your save in the last minute as well. So again, you get this chain effect, right? Of like, okay, I cast harm against you, and then I cast harm against you, and you keep going down the line. And I mean, they can try to outrun you. It's not gonna work.
Right.
Which I love that. And again, this isn't even a disease spell. Yeah, right? This is harm. This is just the spell harm. And yet it acts like this disease vector. And it's just so cool. It's really thematically appropriate. I would be really interested to see how well this one plays. Because with the Urgathoan Necromancer, to me, it's almost like, all right, if you're not a disease and you're not the spell harm, I am no longer interested in you. I'm not taking any other spells, and I'm just going to cast harm 1,000,000 times a day. It just has that vibe. Well, and other disease spells, which we'll get to. So then at 7th level, you get Advance Affliction. So when, the first time a creature fails against harm, it also advances the stage of any affliction that it suffers from, right? So if you've got your diseases up, then you cast harm, well, guess what? That affliction is going to advance to the next stage, which is really cool. And at 9th level, you actually get Abyssal Plague to add to your spell list. So, like, it's very thematic. It's super cool. I would love to see it at the table because it's very neat. And I just love this idea of someone who, worships Urgathoa. Let's say maybe not the nicest person, not necessarily totally evil, but is just constantly spreading disease and despair wherever they go. It's so fun. Maybe that makes me a twisted human being. I'm fine with it.
I don't know that you'd be taking this class unless there was just a little bit
of twistedness to you. Yeah. So next up is the Whispering Way,
which I'm going to talk about because this is my favorite. And the first thing that I want to do for this is I'm going to read the entirety of the text leading up to like the description of your abilities and stuff because it's so good. Okay, ready?
Yeah, real quick before you do that, I do want to specify I haven't been reading all of the flavor text. If you want all of the flavor text, which is really, really good, you're gonna have to buy the book. It's $5.
Yes.
Go buy it.
Not
Actually,
that much.
I think it might be $7. But whatever price it is, it's totally worth.
There is no price too high to pay for this. Well, they're probably.
I don't know about that, but it's very, very good. Extremely good.
But this one is too good to pass up. So,
fair.
After exhausting all means of learning what you can about the return of the Whispering Tyrant, you recognize what you believe to be the truth of the veil that parts the living world from the dead, and you seek to tear it down so others can see it for themselves. You know the system of death itself is broken, stacked against those who don't conform to the unnecessary laws of selfish deities. But you are also patient. You have read too many historical accounts of others like you who played their hand too soon and drew the attention of petulant fools, insistent on maintaining the status quo. For now, you adventure. There is time, and once you achieve lichdom, there will be enough to finally begin your true work. Oh my god, that's so cool.
I feel like that has to end with a good oh,
Anyway,
it's pretty fantastic.
you also get the arcane tradition for this one, so good spellcaster. Your necromantic skill is intimidation, which is the first one to actually have that.
I love that because you are a charisma-based caster, right? So your intimidation check is actually going to be pretty good.
And this flows perfectly with, again, my idea that this should be a really campy kind of villainous player where you're Palpatine. And, you know, the thing about intimidation is so many people play it up like being the tough guy who's going to say, like, I'm going to break your fingers. But you can be intimidating just by having like a presence, a darkness to you of just like being able to look at someone the right way and have the right look to you. And I just love it. The possibilities are endless. Your dominions are going to be abomination and darkness, which again is how perfect for this class.
So perfect.
I love it. When the first thing that you get at first level is Call of the Grave, which is a focus point, which gives you the starting point to a focus pool, which I love focus points because I'm not a huge fan of spell casting. Focus points are just so much easier to me. The Call of the Grave ability lets you fire a ray of sickening energy. And for any GM, you know the power of something being sickened. It ruins everything. And so not only on a critical success do they become sickened 2, but also slowed 1 for as long as it's sickened. So that's just perfect. Really lets you screw things up for whatever creature you're going up against. At 5th level, you also gain a +1 status bonus to the attack roll you make when you cast that spell. So you get to be even more powerful with that specific spell particularly. And then at 7th level, when you get to then at 7th level, you get to siphon life with the life siphon focus spell. It increases the amount of focus points that you get to do, but the cool thing about life siphon, it's a reaction. And once you expend a spell slot to cast a spell from the necromantic school, you get to use that spell magic to heal yourself. So just the mere action of casting a spell is going to rejuvenate you, which is like
amazing.
You're taking someone's life by casting harm, but also like feeding from it. And it's so good. So there's a little note that the Abomination Dominion grants Necromancers Part the Veil as an alternate first level focus spell. So keep that in mind as well.
So Part the Veil is actually one of the spells described on or in the book, which is kind of cool. I just love the idea that it gives you a different feat. So it's actually it says it's on page 16, but it's actually on 17. Part the Veil is an illusion spell. So it's not actually even a necromancy spell. So again, really, really cool. It causes targets to see beyond the world of the living. This is very like 1920s spiritualism. Which whenever I think about like mediums and stuff like that, that's like always what I think about. And whenever I hear like Part the Veil, I think of like charlatans and stage magicians doing tricks and stuff. That's what I think of whenever I hear stuff like that. So I love it. I think it's thematically great.
The prestige.
For sure. But no, I like that the Whispering Way is focus point based, essentially, right? Like their big thing is your focus point spells, which auto heighten, and you automatically, without taking any feats, get 2 focus points.
Yeah,
which is amazing.
You don't have to do anything else. You're just going to get 2 focus points just by the nature of having this class.
So, which kind of leads us straight into feats, which is the next thing we're going to talk about, which you're going to take all of the feats regarding focus points, right? If
Yeah.
you're whispering way, let's just be real here, those are going to be the feats that you take.
A lot of them, for sure.
So, that transitions us really good into feats. But before we do that, is there anything else that you want to say about the necromantic studies or these subclasses? I'm a big fan.
I am too. I think a lot of it kind of just depends on what you're going to be doing in your campaign, which is why it's really important to talk to your GM about what kind of expectations to have when going into play. Because, if you're going to be in a totally water-based campaign where everything has resistance to fire,
Yeah, no, maybe not the thing.
yeah, maybe not the thing for Mazzali until you get to higher levels. Or, if you're going to be facing off against a lot of like one part baddies where, it's not like whole hordes of people, then the Urgothan school is probably not going to be your favorite because there's only going to be like one big dragon. You don't get to use that spell to its fullest efficiency. But that said, if you do talk to your GM, first off, because you always should before doing anything non-Paizo-y, I think. But just get a little clarification without they don't have to spoil the entire campaign, but just like, what could I expect from this? Is this one where I'm going to face a lot of undead? Is this a campaign where we're going to require a lot of healing? Is this a campaign where I'm going to get to be a little bit evil? That's the kind of stuff that you should always talk to them about. And that, to me, is going to inform your choice of school a little bit more than just like what you want to take. Because, if you're going to take this this class into an adventure path, a pre-written adventure path, for example, the GM's going to have a pretty good idea about what you're going to face. Again, like Fist of the Ruby Phoenix, you're probably going to be doing a lot of martial-based stuff. So maybe
just be aware of that.
Yeah, so just, to be aware of that. But if you're doing a homebrew campaign, which is a favorite of many GMs, just get an idea about what to expect and then let that inform your decision. I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong choice, especially from the feats that we're going to go into, which is really going to make up like any class, the core of your player. But these schools do add like a huge chunk of the flavor of your class. So if you're not feeling like you're getting the most out of your school of necromancy choice, just talk to your GM. That's always the first thing. Talk to your GM, get a good idea about what you're doing, and let that inform where you go.
Agree. I mean, I'm always of the thought to be in constant conversation with your GM. I don't think that GMs should be something that, like, one, you should never be scared of asking your GM for things. That's not a good relationship. That's
if you
terrible.
are scared to ask your GM stuff, you're sitting at the wrong table.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that I always like to point out, and people who have heard me over on my podcast are probably sick of me hearing it, a GM is just another player at the table. Yes, I have a different role, but when it comes down to it, we're all friends at a table playing a game together, right? And so, like, I should be helping to facilitate sort of parts of your story, right? Because it isn't just my story, it's our story. We're playing this together. And so as a necromancer, I would just be in, constant conversation of like, this is where I'm wanting to go with it. Oh, last session blew my mind. I'm going to change my direction a little bit, right? And like, that's part of the fun of playing is seeing that evolution of your character. So, just talk to your GM.
Yeah. The only last thing that'll add to keep in mind, and this is a thing for what we'll talk about for the entire duration of this show. But because of the inherent nature of third-party materials, that also means that you're going to do the lion's share of support work for it. So that's something you have to keep in mind with any of these, is that you're going to be the one who has to know these things. It's not going to be something that's filled up by VTT Foundry or Path Builder
Mhm.
that you can easily input stuff, you're going to have to know what your tradition is, what that means. You're going to have to know what your dominions mean. You're going to have to keep in mind your first level abilities and your advanced studies. So that's an important consideration as well, is what level of book working are you going to be comfortable with when taking any of these classes, any third party class, until they get that, which honestly, I would love to see this added to
That'd be
VTT
so cool.
Foundry or Path Builder, because I think it's at that level of quality, personal. But
Oh, I agree.
anyway,
And here's the thing, like you talk about book work, it really makes it easy to find everything. And that
Yes.
is one thing that I'm the only thing, and I say this for every single PDF I ever pick up, I wish it had bookmarks, but that takes time to do. And like already there's so much writing that goes into that. I don't blame them. But
yeah.
like bookmarks make it even easier. But even then, I think it's very easy to find things in this book.
Yeah.
But
If you know how to read a class, you're going to know how to read this one. So
yeah, exactly.
anyway, let's go into the feats.
Let's talk feats. So the first feat that we have to talk about, now, just to let you guys know, in deep dives, I don't typically talk about every single feat. The way that I'm going to do it here is I'm going to talk about a few individual feats, but mostly I'm going to talk about feat chains, right? These are feats that sort of logistically feed into one another.
Right.
So the first one is the Dominion Initiate. We've already talked about this and referenced it many times, but it is a feat that you can pick up at first level. Also, in my opinion, top tier first level feat. Like, I love the Dominions. Yes, I understand that they're very similar to domains. I don't care. Additions that this book has included with spells and stuff, very, very nice. So,
Yeah.
highly recommend. The first sort of chain that I wanted to talk about was the Cabrian feat chain, which starts with Priest King's Legacy. So this is what I was talking about earlier when with your ghoulish transformation. Like, this is what you're going to take when you've taken the ghoul archetype, right?
Mhm.
You are everything ghoul. This is only going to improve that. So it does, makes your claws permanent and increases their damage die. Additionally, when you get your jaw attack, it is permanent and gains the fatal D10 trait, which fatal dice are just a fun trait. Like, I really like that. So I think that's a really great sort of way to make the melee attacks even more power. Other one?
Undead Companion.
Oh, no, I was talking about for the Cabrian Necromancer, but my PDF reader was like, you want to do what now?
Okay.
Cannot. So there is one more sort of in that feat, what I call chain, which is you can actually take it as a Cabrian or Whispering Way, and that is allows you to cast harm to gain basic undead benefits for a while. So essentially, it's called Glimpse of Perfection, and it allows you to gain the benefits of being an undead, which, if you're, say, alive, but really need to heal yourself, this is a way that you could actually heal yourself using harm, which is kind of fun. The next sort of feat that I wanted to talk about was the Shinneman feats. So the first one is at level 4, and that is Jerome. I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of this. Jorogumo legs, which essentially allows you to grow spider legs out of your back, and then you get spider climb,
which is cool.
Oh, it's super cool. It also is really thematic with the other or with that particular necromancer path because of the region that it comes from, right? With the Shinman necromancer, you're talking about the specter wood, right?
Yeah.
So like giant spiders and stuff. Absolutely. The other one for that sort of builds off of that is at 14th level, you get I can never pronounce this word.
Jorogumo
form, which essentially allows you a battle form. So you get the insect form, and you become a spider, which is just really cool and fun.
Yes.
So kind of love it. It made like the Shinman Necromancer kind of click more for me, right? To be able to like, oh, you can now turn into a spider and you can talk to the undead and you're from this mysterious wooded area. It just kind of like clicked for everything.
It fits really well.
Exactly.
And then the feat tree or chain, as you'd call it, that really calls to me as what I would think of as a traditional necromancer is being able to call up the undead with the undead companions. So tell us about those feats.
Yeah, so the undead companions are actually really fun. So first you get undead companion at level 1, which allows you to have an active companion, which is really weird language. I like it. That follows you around and essentially acts as the an animal companion. Now the reason that I say it's an active companion is because you can have up to 4 of these guys and they follow you around, right? But the rest are in an inactive state. So you can't attack them, but you still have your horde following you, right? I also really love that it literally says companions can be easily tucked away into an inventory or stored in a nearby crypt. I'm sorry, are you just taking your undead companion out of your backpack?
Yeah, sounds like it.
I'll be honest with you, I love the idea. I get this vision in my head of the movie The Pacifier, which is a comedy with Vin Diesel, where he is babysitting a bunch of kids, essentially. And I just get this imagine of like a necromancer built like Vin Diesel, but on his chest is strapped a little baby carrier, and inside is a little like a small creature skeleton going rah! Look, I never said that I was a stable human being, but here we are. Which is just really, really fun. There are a couple of feats that sort of feed into this. You get the call companion action, which allows you to essentially raise a skeleton or, whatever undead you want to raise. Then at a second level, you can actually take undead companions can be any animal companion, so not just the undead type. They do gain
when the ranger's animal companion dies, you just get to take him over to your side.
Yeah. He definitely becomes mindless and gains the traits and immunities of an undead companion. But yeah, you raise that wolf as your own, and when the ranger gets mad at you, be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you doing anything for him. You buried him out in the woods. What do you want?" Which is kind of hilarious to me. And then at 4th level, you actually get an additional companion. So because it has the young trait, which is still, but again, you get the baby skeleton strapped to your chest. I don't know what use that would be to you, but you can do it. I don't know why. I love it. You also get mature companion at level 4. Essentially, you get all of the different companion feats for undead companions. So you get incredible companion at level 8, and then undead bond you get at level 10. So that's you can telepathically communicate with your companion, which could be extremely helpful. And then at 14th level, you get specialized companion. So now you get a specialization for them.
And then you also get to command undead and better at commanding the undead. So
absolutely.
Yeah, you are definitely at very early levels going to have an army of skeletons or zombies at your fingertips, and it's only going to grow and get more powerful or have bigger things in your little, menagerie of corpses.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I would say, you mentioned Command Undead. I actually want to talk about that feat in particular, and only as an example because there's actually quite a few feats that have this, and this is one of the things that I think is absolutely ingenious, and I hope not only Paizo, but more third-party publishers do this as well. So you have the Command Undead feat. Right? It's exactly what you would think. It has, you have to use your necrotic touch. You transform the harm spell, and the creature becomes controlled by you instead. However, at the very bottom, it has something that says the Whispering Way. If you are a Whisper Necromancer, the target's level can be equal to or lower than your level -2 instead of what's written, which is -3. But if it is, the duration of failure is or critical failure has to be sustained for up to a minute, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these feats will have a bonus for certain necromantic studies. Right? So there's another feat that's Soul Eater, right? You make a melee strike and then you regain hit points. But if you're a Spirit Singer, right, which was our melee-based one, you can use this as a reaction instead of a base action. And I absolutely love this idea that the feat, anybody can take the feat, right? It doesn't have a requirement. So it doesn't matter what subclass you pick. You can gain this feat. And it's fine, but there is an additional benefit being at this specific subclass. And I want that for everything.
It could get a lot of utility if properly applied to things, especially like we keep on coming back to the Kinesis, but also kind of have to because Kinesis, like this class, has so many gates associated with it, and every single gate has its own 10
Flavor.
12 feats that come with it. This kind of puts 2 feats in one. And
exactly.
Yeah, and that's pretty great because save space, which is good for Paizo publishing, but also like adds a little bit of extra flavor depending on your choices. And because choice is such an important thing for Pathfinder players, knowing that like this Soul Eater is that much more beneficial to you because you chose the Spirit Singer is going to be a huge thing for players. So I'd love to see it in more games too.
No, I agree. I think it's really, really neat and definitely something I had not seen before, and something I want to see more of now that I've seen it. It's very innovative. But that's kind of it. There's a lot of different feats. There's a whole feat line for Urgathoan Necromancer that goes into diseases and stuff. So like definitely check that out. I wish there were some more like specialized feats for all of the different specialties or the necromantic studies, but there's also 8 necromantic studies, and this book is already 24 pages long, so like there was definitely a limiting factor. So
yes,
I want to see more, but it's because what's here is already so good, right?
Yes.
So I want more. I want more.
As we
so
talked
yeah,
about, some of them get double use. So you're kind of
for
getting maybe like a quarter, maybe a third more feats in the feats that you already have.
No, for sure. So
But
now
there are
I want to
two
talk
cool archetypes.
Yes.
Oh, so now
I
there are
was just
2
gonna
cool
say.
archetypes: the Necromancer and the Spell Trickster. The Necromancer archetype is like a dedication where you're just going to take a couple of the things that you already got or could get as a full class, but at every even level is a new feat. To me, the big archetype here is the Spell Trickster.
Yeah, I was actually just gonna say there isn't too much that about the Necromancer dedication. It's very similar to other Necromancer or other dedications. Excuse me. The one thing that I would like to mention is that at level 6 you do actually get you can choose to pick the Necrotic Touch class feature. And for what we talked about, that would be pretty cool. So I would really love to see a cleric like built out with the Necromancer dedication.
Right.
But yes, so when we're talking about the Spell Trickster, which is the other archetype in this book, the Spell Trickster dedication was originally in the Grand Bazaar book, but there have already been third-party publishers that we already talked about that have released additional pathways for the Spell Trickster. This is just another one, right?
Right.
Which is really great, especially because the Spell Trickster dedication as it stands just didn't have that Necromancer feel to it. And this gives you access to some really neat feats. The one that I really want to highlight, which is kind of funny, but this literally came up in a game just last week for me. So at level 4, you can actually select Stabilize Undead. Losing undead minions is always a challenge, especially when even necromancy can't allow them to come back more than once. Luckily, you've developed a temporary solution. It reads like an infomercial. It's so great. Like, I just really want a guy to be, like, trying to put bones up in his cabinet, but then the cabinet flies open, the bones are flying everywhere. He's like, oh, what do I do?
Right.
I don't know why, but that's the mental image I get. But this actually came up. So an NPC that my players, this is a game for Extinction Curse, and they're on book 5. So they're actually aligned right now with some undead creatures, and they're having this NPC, essentially show them around. And she, is obviously fighting with them, and she gets crit by these creatures which have an aura of unluck. So you have to roll twice. And she failed her save, and then critically failed her save. And so she took a boatload of damage and dropped. And my players were going to cast Stabilize on her. And I was like, hey, y'all, just a reminder, she's undead. You can't do that. And they were like, what do you mean we can't do that? And like, one of my players literally had to look up Stabilize, and it actively says, like, you can't use this on undead creatures. And they were like, oh, well, shit.
Yep.
Like, yep.
Too bad.
So go ahead.
Oh, no. That's it.
It just cracks me up. And so all of these, which is kind of the Spell Trickster's deal, right, is taking a spell and expand upon it, or doing something cool with it. Well, with the Spell Trickster, with the specialty of necromancy, right, you're able to do really cool things. So there's Plague Keeper, which expands upon goblin pox, which is really cool. There's Animate Undead Troop. So if you can cast Animate Dead, you summon a troop of appropriate level undead, like a skeleton infantry, or a bunch of skeletal monsters. It's just fantastic. Mind
really
you, that's
good.
a level 16 feat. So yeah,
Oh,
the Spell Trickster's pretty great.
Skeleton troops are level 11 monsters. So, or, creatures. So it's pretty powerful. I love it. Great.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, I absolutely do. And if you want to play that type of necromancer that's like horde of undead, this may be one of the ways to do it, is actually through the Spell Trickster. So yeah, no, it's pretty great. I really love it. So that leads us into ancestry options, right? We've talked all about the necromancer, the different ways you can do necromancy, either through Spell Trickster dedication, or necromancer dedication, or the necromancer itself. What ancestry options fit nicely? For me, it's a bit of a cheat, and I'm gonna say all of the archetypes that are in the Book of the Dead, right?
Yes.
So that's gonna be your vampire, your ghoul, that we've already talked about a lot. These are going to fit thematically perfect for your.
The Lich even.
Oh yeah, the Lich is like absolutely picked. But if we're talking about actual ancestries, I'm gonna have to go with skeleton.
Right.
Because of course I am. Right, it's from Book of the Dead. It gives a charisma boost, which is already great. You get undead benefits. You're gonna need that negative healing. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, and it's the only actual undead one, but there is also a couple of the I need to start that again. Swall Skeleton is also the only one that has undead as a full ancestry. There's also a bunch of the heritages and versatile heritages that would fit along with this pretty well too. Damphir, Duskwalker, for example. Both of those would be, right
Fantastic.
up the alley. Yeah. But on the subject of full ancestries, while any ancestry, of course, can do this well, I would really love to see a Goloma play a Necromancer, which for those of you who are unfamiliar with Goloma, there's probably a reason for that because they're very rare, but they are an incredible ancestry brought up in Mwangi Expanse book. They look like these kind of demon horses. And because of just like their otherness, I would love to see them, play as necromancers who are just kind of like fiddling with life as though it was just another bit of magic, like not even able to comprehend like why people would have a problem with this when they're cleaning up spills with magic, catching things on fire. It's just like, well, there was this dead parrot on the ground and I made it do things for me. That's not so weird. Why do you think it's weird?
Yeah.
Why are you looking at me like that? So, Goloma Kenrasu would be super fun, also from Mwangi Expanse.
Another one that's very like other, right? And so they're looking at undead from a completely different perspective.
Yeah. And of course, humans are going to want to try to find ways to beat death. But, it could also be interesting to, have like an elf who, even though they have these super long lifespans, maybe have gotten disillusioned with the whole concept of life, which is, why they are fine with bringing things back from the dead, because they're just like, you know what? Everything lives,
I'm over
everything
it.
dies, nothing matters, whatever. So.
The most emo. I love it. Well, I think those are all some really, really great options. Overall, when it comes to the Necromancer, I really, really like it. If I ever get a chance to play, I'm probably going to go with the Mazzali or the Urgathoan. But I'll be honest, as we were talking about it today, the Spirit Singer was really calling to me. And now I want to build like a fighter Spirit Singer combo kind of class. So like, there's just so much that you can do with this. It's so much like seeped in Golarion lore. So good. I feel like a lot of time went into this. Do I wish that there were maybe some more options? Absolutely. I would really have loved to have seen a Mazzali like feat tree, right? Where you could keep building upon that fire theme. And there really wasn't that. So like when we come down to it, like there are definitely things that I would love to see if they ever published a second like a Necromancer book. But as it stands, there's so much here. And there are even if you just get it for the Spell Trickster archetype, that's fine. Those feats are great. But I would challenge you to actually make a Necromancer. And if you ever have a one shot, go, full in on it and play one of these options. Because there's just some really cool stuff. And I guarantee you're going to learn something that you didn't know before about Golarion.
Yes. From my end, which is mostly the GM perspective, I am cautiously optimistic about this class. The only reason I say that is not because I don't think that these are incredible classes, incredible schools to do. The feats are really cool and flavorful. The part that as a GM I could see probably maybe being an issue is how a player utilizes it, which is a case for anything, but the Necromancer
Of
more
course.
than almost any other class could kind of be a gateway to maybe some problematic things. It also brings up, if anyone has triggers to dead, which is something that you as a GM probably should have talked about in your session 0 with players, just to make sure that everyone's cool with
Sure.
that. But it's something that you definitely need to make sure that if a player is asking to play this, that you have a good read on if they're the right player that can handle it, because it would be very easy for the wrong kind of player, I think, to make this a very unpleasant experience at your table. Not because this class is not well made. It is inarguably well made to me. It is the perception of what a necromancer is, though, that could make it so that players fall into the well, that's what my character would do,
Yeah,
and
which I hate.
never leads to fun things. It's just
Exactly.
an excuse. So as long as you have the right player for it and the right campaign for it and everyone is cool with it, I think that this is a great class. I would love to have a player in one of my campaigns use the Necromancer, as long as they can do all the booking and stuff for it, because as a third party thing and as a GM, I can't know your character sheet. I'm concentrating on story, on NPCs and stuff. So you really do have to be responsible for knowing what your character does and can do, and how they level up. So that's what I would say is, it's great, but make sure that you are going into it with a good conversation between yourself as a GM and the player.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I think that leaves us. I think we have exhausted the Necromancer.
We have thoroughly dived into it. There are, of course, a lot of things that you can still discover about it by purchasing the Samurai Sheepdog book on
please.
Pathfinder Infinite or Drive-Thru RPG. Pretty sure you could also get it on Paizo's website, but anyway, there will definitely be links in the show notes. Please consider getting it, and whether it's because you want to play a necromancer or you want to learn more about different, undead kind of traditions in Golarion, or you just want to take one of the archetypes, this is a fantastic book. It adds a lot to your game and makes a class that could be very poorly done very well done, in my opinion. So with that, well, is that how I want? That's not how I want it. So with that, Beth, do you have any
We've been at this for like 3 hours, so I get it.
Yeah. Okay. So Beth, where can people find more of you if they want to listen to your podcast or just see your thoughts?
Sure. So definitely go check us out wherever you get your podcasts at Dice Don't Die podcast. It's a great time. We do a lot of these deep dives on published Paizo content, and I am harassed by my other co-hosts because that they're my players and that's what they like to do. We have a good time over there. Yeah, I know you definitely were, 100%. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at FayTheGM. There I post all my good Paizo hot takes, as well as things that are going in my life and wonderful animal pics. So always a good time.
And of course, you can follow me at Rulelord2E on Twitter. If you have something that you'd like to be featured on Infinite Adventures, please email me at rulelord2e@gmail.com. All we ask for is a complimentary review copy, and we'll work with you to set up a time to be able to discuss it and deep dive into it and, let people know about your cool product. If you want to know more about other third-party things, though, I have to plug a convention that I'm working on called Third Party Con, otherwise known as TPK, where we're going to basically be the we're basically going to be the PaizoCon of third-party content. We're going to have streams with other podcasts, other content creators, with publishers, freelancers, as well as having a gaming portion where you'll be able to try out third-party adventures, classes, feats, and all of that stuff. So just like PaizoCon, but all third-party stuff, because we think that third-party is just as legitimate a way to game as stuff published by Paizo. So with that, we'll see you
On the next
adventure.
We're so sorry, skeletons, you're so misunderstood. You only want to socialize, but I don't think we should. The spooky, scary skeletons shout startling, shrilly screams. They'll sneak